What's up guys, Commander Alex here, and today I have kind of an interesting video. So basically I'm going to be talking about how to counter the current Warhorn meta. Now normally I don't like to talk about countering because then you just get into a discussion of countering, and it just can kind of go on forever. So normally I don't like to talk about countering different metas and strategies, but I feel like the Warhorn meta, you need to at least somehow talk about how you counter it because people are getting really fed up with how strong it is, and I do agree that it's slightly broken. I don't think it's an exploit though. I think that it's just kind of something that snuck into the game that they weren't thinking about when they put in, but at the same time I don't think it was something that they didn't intend to have in the game. They did write in there that it would proc onto turrets, or really anything that wasn't a hero. So that's kind of my thoughts on if it's like should be in the game or not. But as far as the strategy itself, let's sort of talk about what it is. Basically, you have two or three people on your team buy Stormguard banners into Warhorns, then they buy mobility and they buy attack speed, and they sacrifice themselves onto the turret. So the thing about the Stormguard proc is that it will actually deal 3% of a turret's health per second, meaning that with two people hitting them, you're going to be getting 6% of their health per second, and you kind of see where that goes. If you get three people hitting, 9% of health per second, plus all those auto attacks, and if you build slightly tanky, you can run through the turrets incredibly quickly. And the thing about this strategy is when you run through the turrets, if the other team doesn't hit you, if you die before the other team hits you, then they don't get gold for your deaths. And when you take turrets down, you get a pretty massive gold amount. That's 300 gold for everyone on your team, which is 900 gold in all. Is pretty massive. It's the same as a gold mine payout. Also, the other thing about this strategy is that you take your minion mines and gold mines as soon as they spawn, because you have the creep damage too, meaning that you deal a lot of percent health damage to creeps. And that is a lot of gold income as well. So basically the way this works is you die in ways that don't give the other team gold, and yet you're getting tons of gold from killing like all of their objectives. And the only real way to kind of counter this is to just camp lane. So let's sort of talk about how you exactly counter this and how you actually can survive against the Warhorn strategy into the late game, and then obviously destroy any team using it in the late game. Because if you can survive to that like post 20-minute mark, it becomes an inviable strategy because of the death timer cooldown. So you really just need to kind of hunker down and survive until that late game, and then you will be able to win the game pretty handily in most cases. So to do that, you have a couple things that you need to keep in mind. First off, your laner needs to have very good awareness of the wave. You don't want your laner to push the wave into the other team's turret, because that's going to make them overextend. Now the issue with this strategy and overextending isn't that you're going to get ganked and that you're going to die, it's that the enemy team, or rather the enemy junglers, are going to circumvent you and they're going to go directly to your turret. And since you're away from your turret by overextending, they're going to get free hits on your turret without you being able to get back in time to actually hit them. This means that they get free damage on your turret and they die without any of the enemy team hitting them, meaning that your team doesn't get gold for their deaths. So basically, you want to be there to, if not kill them quickly, at least get a couple hits on them, meaning that when they die, you still get gold and you keep yourself in the fight. Because if they sacrifice themselves 4 or 5 times, and all of your teammates are there to kind of hit them and get kills and assists, then you actually balance out the gold pretty evenly per turret. The issue with the strategy comes when you don't actually get those kills and assists, and instead they are just dying without being hit by your team, and it's not really any gold income for you. So that's the first thing you need to keep in mind. Manage the wave near your turret. What I like to do is I will freeze the wave just outside of my turret aggro range. So what you want to do is you want to have the enemy laner push, and then you're just going to be slowly last hitting, just taking those last hits, not trying to push out the wave or anything. If the wave gets too big, you can obviously use some of your wave clear to kind of manage it down to a more manageable size, but you want to keep it just on that point of outside of your turret aggro range, but not so far that you are away from your turret. So it's a very hard thing to do. Freezing the wave is quite difficult, but when you learn how to do it in low elo, it's absolutely destructive in any meta because people will overextend to try and get farm. And in high elo, if you're playing with a team that understands what you're doing, it can be really destructive as well. Also, you can deny the enemy laner quite a bit of farm if they're smart enough to not try and last hit. But the whole idea of freezing a wave is really just for another video. So moving on to our next tip here, we have to talk about the team comp. So when you're playing against a Warhorn meta, you want to pick a team comp that counters the Warhorn meta. And to do that, you want to have a very strong early game team comp. The reason for this is that they're going to be picking a very strong early game team comp as well, but they're going to basically throw all of their eggs into the basket by buying that Stormguard banner. So if all 3 people on their team buy a Stormguard banner, that is 18,000 gold down the drain. In the late game, that 18,000 gold won't mean anything for them. So if you can get to the late game, you will most likely win even if you have mirror team comps. The way that you need to do this is you need to pick a comp that it has very strong wave clear. So my personal favorites are Celeste and Saw at the moment. I feel like Saw is a really strong counter to this meta because you can clear the wave effectively when you need to, and you can deal quite a bit of damage early game. So when they try and dive your turret, you should be able to kill them off pretty quickly. Also, Saw has his suppressive fire, which is a slow, and that means that you can slow them getting to your turrets and hopefully kill them before they even get to your turrets. As far as your jungle goes, you're going to go for a pretty strong early game jungle, and you're going to go for a jungle that can invade often, because you're going to want to balance out the gold by invading their jungle and taking as many creeps as you can. And you're going to want to go for a jungle that has high mobility, so that when they start pushing your turrets really, really hard and trying to suicide onto them, you can rotate up quickly and you can help your laner defend your turrets. Alright, so now that we know about what are good junglers, supports, we know what is a good laner for this meta, let's talk about kind of general tactics for this meta. So first things first, we already talked about kind of freezing that wave just on the outside of your turret aggro, but as far as your jungler goes, you're going to want to invade incredibly often. The reason that this strategy works is because they continue to get gold off of your turrets, but if you can balance that gold out by taking their jungle creeps, and by taking objectives in the jungle, if they take the gold mine, you take it right back. That's going to balance out the gold quite effectively. The other way that you can make this strategy work for you is by forcing fights. They're going to spend a lot of gold on items that aren't going to help them in PvP fights, that is player versus player fights, so you can force fights onto them. If they try to dive your turret, fight them. I mean, yes, it seems kind of funny, but you'll see a lot of teams that instead of trying to fight them under your turret, they will actually just go and take farm, and that's not the correct strategy, because what's going to happen is they will keep diving your turret and then they'll just run through your first turret, and once your first turret goes down, this strategy tends to win, I'd say probably 90 to 95% of the time. So what you need to do is camp that lane, make sure that when they dive you, you are there to help defend with your laner and force a fight, because in the early game, with 3 Stormguard banners on an enemy team, there was practically no way that they will win a fight if it's a 3v3 balanced fight. So all you need to do is force that, and if you force it a couple times, they'll end up falling behind, and probably past the 15 to 20 minute mark, they won't be able to do much. Other than that, I have a couple tips that are kind of circumstantial, but you know, they are good tips to have when playing against a strategy. So my first one would be that you should place mines around your turret, especially in the early game. Mines do a lot of damage to people, and under turret, you want to kill them as quickly as possible. So by placing a mine there, you can be able to deal that extra burst damage to them, kill them just that much quicker, and mean that they can't do as much damage to your turret. And then the other kind of tip that I have for you guys is that you really need to focus on your first turret. Farming in the early game against a strategy isn't as important, because if they get your first turret, it's all downhill from there. Because what they can do is they can then circumvent your lane and they can go to your back turret, and again and again and again until they're basically at your vein crystal, and then there's very little that you can do to defend. So what you want to do is make sure that you keep your first turret alive at least till, like, I'd say 10 minutes. Because if you don't, they're going to be able to keep circumventing your lane, and your laner really won't be able to do anything unless he sits very, very far back passively, in which case their laner is going to get quite fed, and they might actually end up winning the game in the late game if their laner gets too fed and your laner gets too underfed. So those are kind of my tips for you guys. Obviously, I don't know everything about the strategy. I have used this strategy sometimes. I'm not going to say that I haven't. I know a lot of people have been doing some sort of pack saying that we shouldn't play it, and you know, I'm not sure where I really stand on that. Some people are saying that this is an exploit. I don't personally believe it's an exploit. That being said, I don't believe it's really that fun of a strategy to use. I think that it's kind of toxic, but at the same time, I do believe it is the most effective tactic at the moment. That is what meta stands for, obviously, and so I don't think it's bad for people to be using it. I just feel like people need to learn how to counter it, and for the most part, it will go away pretty quickly. Also, I feel like Super Evil Megacorp is most likely working on it, and will either fix it in the 1.9 patch, or we'll put out a hotfix for it very soon. So we'll have to see where that goes, but hopefully this video helped you guys facing the Warhorn meta. I've seen it tons, all the way down from pretty good all the way up to POA. It's everywhere, guys, and it is very, very annoying, but definitely counterable. So I hope you guys kind of enjoy the video, learn something from the video, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. See ya.